How's it going, everybody? With this video I want to expand a little on what I started in my previous lights are a problem video. That one might have confused a few people as my statements are usually in favor of speedy lights, so if you haven't seen that one yet, it'll probably help with understanding what I'm getting at with this one here. Most people see lights as an offensive tool. Throwing an attack is obviously offense. And offense got better because more of those attacks are landing now. That was one of the goals that came with the core combat update. But at the same time, lights also became better defensively. We've already had similar cases before. 400 ms neutral lights before the CCU were used as an interrupt tool. And now throwing out lights to interrupt someone has become very prevalent. This means that by having buffed them as an offensive tool, they also got stronger defensively. Before, this was way more risky. Most people could feint to neutral and simply parry them for big damage in exchange. So trying to interrupt things had quite a bit of risk associated with it. Now, while functionally still exactly the same, that risk has gone down quite a bit. For a lot of people, neutral lights have become mostly unreactable. Even if you make the read that the other person is going to interrupt you, simply feinting to neutral and parrying has become much harder. For others, this might even be two reads. First, that your opponent is going to interrupt, and then the side of the attack as well. So what should be your offense puts you on the defensive instead. In general, the community is usually in favor of mix-ups. If you ask someone what they prefer, either really fast attacks or proper mix-ups, they'd usually gravitate towards the mix-ups, even if the definition is not all that clear to everybody, but I digress. Point is that I definitely agree with people that say that mix-ups need to be strong. Doesn't matter what mix-up, whether it's a bash-based one or soft feint, whatever. But those being interruptible is not necessarily a bad thing. Interrupts as an additional defensive option are fine. Yet they do limit your options, your offensive options. Because they are so potent, you limit your own offense to options where you yourself are favored. Let's take one of the charged bash mix-ups. You'd rather force them to dodge, as that usually leaves you in the driver's seat. Granted, you can't throw out the bashes willy-nilly, because then you yourself are going to get GB'd instead of forcing your opponent into a dodge and GB'ing them. One of the options that the devs chose to combat this somewhat at least is to give out hyper armor. All four of the charged bashes have hyper armor on the fully charged one. Warden's shoulder bash, Hito's kick sweep, Centurion's jab, and Warmonger's slap, I guess. Yet they do not function the same. Many more factors play into what can be used when, and which option is the best in each scenario. Once again, not a bad thing. Having these function differently adds to the variety. Out of these four, Hito's is considered the weakest, both in terms of possible damage. You know, the fact that fully charged gives a light and normal kick gives a heavy. Then the recovery, as well as all the backstep options that can sometimes nullify the whole mix-up, which makes the character terribly matchup dependent. Not being able to use parts of your moveset simply because someone counterpicked you seems rather dull in a game that doesn't have nearly enough heroes to warrant extremely polarizing matchups. But that's a topic for another day. I'm just hoping Ubisoft tries addressing this before I even get around to it. Who knows? But yeah, Hito's kick/sweep mix-up. No matter how you enter it, meaning light, heavy block, heavy hit, your opponent can always throw out a light attack to interrupt the charging. Like I said, Hito's mix-up is backwards, so why would you charge in the first place? On top of that, backstep options are available for lots of heroes, making an already weak mix-up even weaker. Centurion's jab mix-up, on the other hand, has a little variety to it. Obviously, uncharged can't be interrupted, as that's its whole point, but you obviously want to get to the big damage and can't always rely on your teammates to guarantee it for you. So, you do charge sometimes and also feint to GB, which a light will also stuff. Lights, blocked heavies, and also pins leave you open to be interrupted. Only heavies that connect will hit stun your opponent long enough to make your hyper armor kick in to trade light for punch. The other example is Warmonger, which I've told you guys many times already. One light into bash is interruptible, two lights into bash is not interruptible. All these differences come from multiple factors. Length of the charge, hyper armor timing, as well as hit/block stun of the previous attack. But in the end, their very purpose is to prevent those interrupts. But All of those were put in place with a combat system in mind that was way more reactable. Like I said, attempting an interrupt carried a significant risk. Now that interrupting has become far more common practice, maybe it's time to rethink hyper armor and mix-ups that have a significant setup time. I personally think that going deeper into your chains should reward you more, as it also carries risks just to get there. Maybe for others this is just another example of why lights need to be slower again, but I think just because it created some additional issues doesn't mean that can be immediately labelled as a bad change that needs to be reverted. And it's also not just lights, as usual bashes work as well when it comes to interrupting things. Does that mean we need to open the door for super armor moves? Probably not. I also mostly covered bash mix-ups, but as we can see in Kensei's finisher mix-up, it can work without bashes. You can't blindly option select the Kensei or try and throw those lights out without thinking, as you will most likely trade in the Kensei's favour. But you tell me, are mix-ups too prone to interrupts now? Do we need changes, or would they be too oppressive then? A term Ubisoft likes to use when the community cries about something. An oppressive mix-up. Which translated means it's one that is working. Or not even that, who knows. Maybe they'll use it for something else in the future. But yeah, I hope the video was interesting. Thanks for watching. Laters everybody.
Running over will smoke bomb to aim. It's not flask.
That fucking Fury Flask.